This was my first pair of boots I bought for Rose Anvil almost 10 years ago. And they've been some of my most worn boots ever since because Lems is a rare brand in that more anatomical barefoot style where their footwear is actually durable, crazy comfortable, and they look shockingly good for how wide and anatomical they are. But they are not without their flaws. So after years of just begging Andrew, the CEO of Lems, to let me make my ultimate version of the Boulder boot, it's finally here. And so we're gonna cut my well-worn pair in half, which is kind of a sin, to be honest. I've had these for so long. I think it'll be worth it. And we're gonna cut the collaboration pair so that we can run them through all of our tests so I can show you every aspect of this boot that I wanna change for my ultimate perfect version of the Boulder boot after almost 10 years of wearing Lems. And like I said, the first time I really heard of Lems was when I got my first shop and I needed a boot that was comfortable for hard concrete. I needed a boot that didn't just squish all my toes together all day, because I swear that at that point I was like, I think my pinky toe was like curling under my foot. And it's because I was wearing like two narrow toe boxes, I was standing on hard concrete, and I still wanted the boot to be versatile enough that I could wear it for camping, hunting, hiking, to school, literally anywhere and everywhere, because I literally only had money for one pair of boots. And that's when I discovered Lems and their Boulder boot, and this is that exact pair, and I still wear them. Well, maybe not after today, actually. So then what is this boot that I have that I've worn for so long? Well, the brand is Lems. The style is the Boulder boot. They weigh a shockingly light 14 ounces. They retail for also a shockingly affordable $155. They're made in China, and the way they position this Boulder boot is, the Boulder boot is our original minimalist boot built for everyday adventure. With a zero drop platform, wide toe box, and ultra flexible sole, it's made to move the way you do. Then what is this? Well, the brand is Rose Anvil X Lems. The style is the Summit Pro. They weigh 1 pound, 1.5 ounces, so a little bit heavier. They retail for $230, so 80 bucks more than the most affordable Boulder boots. They're also made in China, and the way they position this, or at least the way that I position it in my head, is I just wanted to take what Lems does best, the comfort, the width, and combine it with what we do at Rose Anvil, which is just adding in all the durability, the heavy leather, and all the heritage aspects that I've learned from cutting apart hundreds of pairs of shoes over the last 5 years by doing this channel. So if you want either of these boots, check out the links in my description. And keep in mind the collaboration pairs are gonna be limited, but if you're watching this after they're sold out, just get on the email list below, because I'll do everything I can to beg Lems to keep bringing these back. So now let's start going through what did I actually want changed, why did I want it changed, because that's the beauty of this collaboration. I have these. I have so much experience in all the different forms of this boot that I've had the opportunity to find every little aspect I want changed. Because if you look at the leather on this original Boulder boot, you can see it's flaking off. It's almost like a little bit gummy. You know, I can literally just rip off little chunks of that top coat. Keep in mind, these are 10 years old, and leather with the coating on top is prone to doing this. But that's why I don't like coatings on top of leather, because it gives it that nice even finish, but it's just not, it doesn't give you that nice even finish for 10 years. And let's just see if I can keep scratching through. Does this go all the way through the leather? No, you can see I'm starting to get that lighter grain. And it was on the thinner side, it was right around 1.2 millimeters thick, so more of a sneaker leather. Compare that to the Summit Pros, this leather is 1.8 to 2 millimeters thick. So right where you'd want to see for boot thickness leather, you can see it has no top coat on top. We burned it to make sure there wasn't any plastic or paint on top. We did a macro shot to show you the cross section. You can see how much more pigment in this old Lems leather compared to this new leather. And this leather also has that buffed surface, so when you give it little scratches and stuff, it doesn't show as well. It's got that nice matte finish to it. And so just through and through, this is a significantly better leather. Keep in mind, this is a 10-year-old boot from Lems, and their leather's improved a lot, their materials have improved a lot, and some of their boots have really high quality leather like this as well. So it's not saying all Lems leather sucks. We ran the puncture test on it. First it came through at 185 and then at 150, so it's a really hardy, strong leather. But keep in mind, part of the whole Lems thing is that they're light, they're flexible, they're easy to wear, they're easy to break in. And when you start beefing them up by adding thicker leather, they are gonna be less flexible, they're gonna be more expensive, and they're gonna be harder to break in, because they're just stiffer, they're just hardier, they're just more durable because of that. So it's always gonna be a trade-off. It's a sliding scale of comfort and durability for the most part. Some of you guys might know I like little baby knives, but they're also, cheap knives are cheap. They start chipping, they don't cut very long. And so I'm always looking for a high quality small knife. And that is when Nafs reached out and was like, hey, saw your little mini knife video, check this out. And they just launched their Lander 5. Look at this thing. That is the size I want. I like these little knives with the little belt clip, because all I ever do is I just put it right there on my belt, and I forget about it as soon as I get a package from Amazon. And the thing is, look how small this thing is. You know, compared to the other NAFS knives, like that's still a pretty small pocket knife, but this is just itty bitty. They're also a Utah company, and we're a Utah company. You gotta support the Utah bros. And another Lander 5. So let's see what this one looks like. Ooh, a little gunmetal. Out of the two of them, I'd go gunmetal. But how much is the knife? You know, it's a small knife. They're supposed to be affordable. Well, they call it the $30 knife that doesn't suck because this thing is only 30 bucks. And for you hardcore knife guys, you get the 8CR14 MOV steel, a cold forged handle, solid frame lock. That's actually, you have to have that in a baby knife, otherwise you cut your finger off. And it is small. This thing is only 2.2 inches long. And despite what your girlfriend says, that is small. So if you've been looking for a knife that punches above its weight, that's still affordable, that's still small, still compact, this is the knife. So get yourself the Lander 5, support NAFS. They've been a huge support for us. They make high quality stuff. They're right here in Utah. Huge thanks to NAFS for sponsoring this video. Get yourself a Lander 5 below. But what about the inside? Because if there's one complaint I have with the Boulder boots, it's the lining. Because as you can see from my personal pair, I've completely blown out the lining. It's all yellow and gross and discolored. Maybe not the best smelling pair of shoes I have. And that's because it's just a flannel lining. It's basically just like a shirt material for the lining. The pros of that is it's really breathable. It absorbs your sweat really quick. It's really cool, especially with the canvas on the sides. It's really affordable. But this is the problem you get, you know? So once again, you're trading off durability for price and comfort. So what do we do with the Summit Pro? Well, I bet you couldn't guess. I was like, we gotta have a leather lining. We just have to. Like, if we're gonna do the ultimate Boulder boot, we gotta do the leather lining. And honestly, that's maybe the biggest change that we made in this boot that I really, really pushed for, because this nice leather lining is gonna absorb your sweat like this. See that? Taking a nice absorbent it. It's gonna smell a lot better because leather's naturally antimicrobial and antibacterial, and so it doesn't get quite that funky like cotton stink. It's a way more durable. You're not gonna see this same splitting and stuff happening. Like, this is how weak this stuff is. And keep in mind, once again, this is a $150 boot. And so, you know, we're not comparing against the highest quality boots in the world. But this is why I wanted leather lining, because I can literally just rip out a chunk of the lining. Versus leather, significantly stronger, a lot more abrasion resistant. You're not gonna wear through it like this. And so I was like, we have to do a leather lining at all costs. We gotta, like, your foot needs to be surrounded in leather. And they pulled it off. And I also wanted to do a leather that wasn't heavily pigmented, that's still gonna absorb your sweat, it's still gonna breathe, because if it was pigmented on top, when I put a little spit on there, it wouldn't just immediately absorb in like that. And we looked at the cross section, we took the measurements, it's right at 1 millimeter thick, what you would expect from a lining leather. But same as earlier, once you start adding more materials, more thickness, more of that, you start to lose some of the values. So this leather lining, it is gonna be hotter, it's gonna be heavier, it's gonna be harder to break in, but to me, all those trade-offs are well worth it. And that's the beauty of it, is if you don't want that leather lining, they still make this basically the exact same today. And then maybe the second biggest thing that I really wanted to work on with this boot is the outsole and midsole, because this first Boulder boot, this was the only outsole they had. It was just a blown rubber outsole, so you got some of the grip of rubber, but it's also a foam, so you get the squish of it. But the problem with that is it wears out fairly quickly because it's not hard rubber. It just kind of sloughs off. You get to a point where you've almost, like I've almost worn through this entire heel. And this worked really well for the shop because it was squishy, it was soft, but as soon as I started going, you know, I was up in USU, I started to do a little hike to the wind caves or something. It's just slipping all over the place because it's flat and I'd worn a lot of the lugs off, and this blown rubber's never quite as grippy. So instead of doing it on the bandsaw, let's just do a quick cut on camera and see how much I wore that down. That's how I used to do it in the early days before we even had a bandsaw. I also got a new blade on this knife, so if you're like, dang, that cut easy. I only replace a blade like once every 6 months. I should do it way more often. Okay, so let's see. Okay, we cut it a little bit more down here. So right there at the heel, you can see how much I wore that down. Like, yeah, we're down to like 4 millimeters of foam right there. And now let's just cut the rest of this open. I'll show you the rest of the lining. But to be honest, that lining really didn't wear out anywhere except for at the heel. So not bad at all. But you can see the problem there. Like, once you really start wearing through that foam, you lose a lot of that squish, you lose all the grip. And so for the Summit Pro, I was like, we gotta do rubber outsole. And Lems had developed a few other outsoles since I first bought this boot. You know, they had their more gecko style grip for wetter conditions, their luggy sole for more hiking, because, you know, a lot of people are like, I love this boot, but I wanna go hiking in it with have some traction. So they developed a more grippy version. And I was like, what if we took the grippy version and we just like had Vibram make it or something? You know, because Vibram's one of the names in the industry. There's Merrimack, there's Vibram, and then there's everyone else. And that's why anytime you see Vibram on the bottom of a boot or a shoe, it's a good indicator of quality because they're not cheap. They're expensive to work with because the rubber's really high quality, it's durable, it's grippy, especially the Mega Grip by Vibram. This, I can't believe we actually got this done. I kind of just threw this out to Andrew, like, it'd be really cool if we could do like a Vibram outsole, like the Mega Grip with this and this. And then he's like, we did it. And so we got that Vibram logo right here on the side, the big Vibram right there, and it's their Mega Grip compound, which is really grippy, and it's in the Lems pattern here. So what's cool too is you got these little like nubs right there for extra grip, while still having plenty of big lugs to really grip. And you can see why, you know, this is significantly more grippy. And on top of it's a Vibram, so you got that quality and durability of Vibram. And the nice thing about the Summit Pro and their other versions that have a similar outsole is you still have that foam midsole. So it's basically like you took this boot and then glued a rubber outsole on the bottom. So you still get that same squish underneath your foot, but you get a lot more grip on the ground. It's still a fairly soft rubber. It's 60 Shore A, so it's gonna last a long time because it's harder, but not so hard like a work boot that you're not gonna get that extra grip and that flex that's caused by that softer rubber. We did the puncture test. It punctured through at 77 pounds, so not bad, all things considered. But there are, once again, pros and cons because you lose some of that flexibility, you add weight to it, you lose some of the ground feel that people really like about that natural articulation. It really does create a lot more of a platform underneath your foot, which for me, I was totally fine with because I like the barefoot footwear in this like more anatomical style because it's super wide, because it's more zero drop where you don't have a huge heel and it's just comfortable to wear. I don't really care as much about strengthening my feet and making sure I'm connecting one with nature and I can feel every rock and twig underneath my foot. I want a little more protection. I want a little stability because I'm gonna hike in these. I wanna work in these, I wanna play in these. I want this to be a very versatile boot, but some people really like that flexibility and all the things that are inherent to Lems styles that's gonna be missing a little bit from this Summit Pro. And it also adds a good amount of weight. Because remember, this is under a pound, and this adds like maybe like half a pound more, I think. But what about how these are actually made? Well, the regular Boulder boot, it's just a cemented construction. This is basically built like a sneaker, where you've got the Strobel stitch, and then that Strobel board, and then the outsole is glued on. And that's why they feel like a sneaker. You know, it's in the shape of a boot, but it moves and articulates a lot more like a sneaker because you don't have all those layers of leather stacked underneath like your more true heritage boots. It's in the shape of a boot, but the construction of a sneaker. So for the Summit Pro, I did not want to overcomplicate it. I didn't want to make this a true heritage boot because that wasn't what we're trying to do. There's plenty of mock toe heritage boots out there. I wanted what Lems actually is. So we kept that classic construction of the Strobel stitch with the lasting board, and that's why you get all that flexibility and all that articulation, but now it's a lot more solid of a platform due to that outsole and that hardier leather. And so that was the perfect middle ground for me. And some people are not gonna like that. Some people are gonna want like, oh, I wish it was like a true heritage boot with like a stitched down construction, this, and this. And I'm like, there's a place for that, and there's a lot of brands that already do that, but nobody really is doing this. And especially on the Lems platform of this wide toe box, the zero drop, all the comfort. And it's that same sliding scale. How much of that comfort and lightweight are we willing to lose at the expense of durability? And for me, it was like, it's trying to find that perfect middle ground where you still have attributes of the heritage boots, the heavy leather, without losing all the flexibility, the comfort, and that super wide toe box. And that's why I still wanted to keep this old school mock toe stitch because I still want this boot to be repairable. You know, like if you pop one of these stitches and it's a machine sewn stitch, it's pretty tough to repair. With this big chunky mock toe stitch, not only does it work as an optical illusion to kind of hide how wide the boot actually is, but it's repairable. All you have to do is get a needle and some thread and you can re-sew this entire mock toe. So now, let's cut these in half. All right, we got my dream Boulder boot cut in half. So now, let's see what's inside. Look at all that beautiful leather lining all the way through. The nice thing too, I did not realize until I literally cut this in half was this lining is fairly seamless all the way up through the sidewall. And so some of that water resistance that you lose by having this butt style stitch here on the mock toe instead of that overlap stitch on some other models is somewhat fixed by that lining sealing that completely away. And you can see on top of that, you also have a little bit of a synthetic little backer on top, giving it a little bit more structure. And obviously this is not a true moccasin construction because we've just got done with the Made in the United States, the Matusa mocks for Mocktober. You can see that strobel stitch right there. But that's actually really, really nice because it adds some of that benefit of the seamless sidewall. Not where it maybe matters most, but more importantly, it does lock away all that dirt and all that grime from getting to the inside of your boot by having this big Mockto stitch. Now you can see instead of this fake leather heel counter, that actually held up really, really well. Is this fake leather? Have I been wrong this whole time? I'm second guessing myself. There's a lighter. Watch it not have gas. Maybe I was wrong. This might be real leather. Let's find out. Either way, it's impressive because it really didn't wear through anywhere on the heel. Leather usually does not start on fire and just burn by itself. So, oh, that was so hot on my finger. The hazards. Look at that. Liquid hot fake leather right on the fingertip. So clearly not real leather, but it still held up really well because it's this type of fake leather that's not just like a plastic coating with foam behind it. It's the fibrous type of fake leather. And it did hold up really well, but it's not gonna hold up as well as leather. And you can see it doesn't have that same stitch line right there. It runs right down the middle. And what's cool is I guess I just never realized this, that lining covers that Mockto stitch on all of these that have this Mockto stitch. I don't think we've even noticed that or ever talked about it on the channel. It's pretty freaking sweet, bro. And now you can see what I meant by this basically combining the squish of this outsole while still keeping that hard Vibram outsole, because this is basically just that outsole on the regular Boulder boot encapsulated by this Vibram Mega Grip. So now you can really see all that stuff we upgraded, all the more heritage, that rose anvil thing that we put into these boots, really trying to push these brands. And we could have kept pushing for more and more higher quality materials, but then you start losing some of the aspects like we talked about, the flexibility, the weight, but especially the price. And that's a big part of the reason why I really love the regular Boulder boots. They're $155. I think when I bought them, they're like $135. And some people are still gonna want this old school, affordable Boulder boot because there's certain things that we lost along the way to make my ultimate Boulder boot. And one of those things is price. Instead of $255, it's $230. But I think we hit that sweet spot. I think we upgraded all the most important components that matter most, that functionality. You know, it's that point of diminishing return. Instead of going all the way to the top where it starts to plateau, we kept it at an affordable sub $250 price point while still having the leather lining, while still having thicker leather, while still adding the Vibram outsole, upgrading everything that mattered most and keeping the things that are affordable that still have value attached to it, like the strobel stitch construction, like the foam midsole, like the Mockto stitch. All the things that we kept that could have been upgraded still add functionality to this, in my opinion. And I think this is a boot that has been needed for a long time that a lot of these brands don't make, because these more barefoot brands, a lot of times you're just standing like 2 millimeters of rubber, there's no support, they're all very like vegan friendly, so they don't use hardly any high quality materials. And now after a decade of dreaming of taking this boot that I wear so much and making my perfect version, it's finally real. It's literally a dream come true. And huge shout out to Lems for literally making this dream a reality. Like I've wanted this boot for so long, and it's not easy for these brands that are used to doing one thing, and then we come in and we're like, more leather, more this, more that. It's a pain, it's hard to source things. It's a lot of times the construction techniques don't always transfer over, and so this was a big project by Lems. And we've been working on this for a long time, trying to get this really dialed in to find that sweet spot, and I think we did it. So if you've been needing a lighter weight, really durable, but anatomical with all the comfort, but still all the heritage qualities that matter, check out the Summit Pro. But also the other Boulder boots are great too. Check out the regular Boulder boot, check out the waterproof ones, check out all the different variations, because there's a reason why this is one of my most favorite boots and probably my most worn boot of all time. So thank you guys, see ya. It hurts, help.